Hey guys, welcome back to Bass Musician Magazine. This is a segment called Meet the Maker. Today in-house I have Mr. Jamie Simpson. You might be familiar with some of the preamps that I've been talking about lately if you've been following me on Instagram or if you've been following me on Facebook or YouTube. I've been talking about his product because I was a Noble user for a long time. And recently I switched over. I've been using his preamp, which I really like. But we're gonna get a chance to meet him because I know there's been a feed actually. There was some stuff going around on Talk Bass as well, right?
So I heard. I don't know. I'm not on there, but yeah, apparently there's a buzz going on, which is good. You know,
it's good. Yeah. And that's always a good thing, especially if it's like right now. It's kind of like the inside track. If you know, you know, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's been that way for a while with us. We started out probably about 2009, I would say.
Well, hold on, Jamie. Before you jump into that, so you're not new to the game, right?
Oh, no.
So before even making the preamps, what were you doing?
Well, I'll give you a little history of the company. About 2009, we started.
Okay.
We were doing. No, you're fine. We were doing. Actually, wait, let me start.
Because well, you don't have to restart. We're not going to restart. Let's go into this because that's actually a really great point. So you've worked for a lot of famous musicians, right?
A lot of people.
So you're not your pedigree is pretty damn good.
Yeah.
So let's be honest here.
Yeah, we started doing a lot of keyboard tech work. We worked for everybody from Bernie Worrell and John Medeski, Government Mule, Soul Live. Lettuce.
Okay, when you say we, you mean you.
Yeah, it's me. It's the royal we.
Yeah, okay.
The company-wide we, because there have been people that have helped along the way in various different capacities. You know, I can't take credit for the whole thing by myself. You know, it takes a village.
Yeah,
but
right.
No, we've been doing this for a long time. We started out doing a lot of custom work on Hammond organs, electric pianos like Wurlitzers, Fender Rhodes, a lot of old synthesizers, stuff like that. Then we've been building. I've been building custom amps, pretty much one-off for players in the scene like Neil Casal. Neil used one of my amps on the Fare Thee Well Dead 50 intermission music with circles around the sun, which was very cool. He used it on stage with Phil Lesh at Terrapin Crossroads, and so there's a lot of great history that's gone along with it and everything.
I think the first time I met you was in 2012 at one of the amp shows. With Chuck
correct.
Hammer.
Yeah, with Chuck.
I was there with Phil Jones and ended up meeting Chuck, and then Chuck introduced me to you.
Yeah, Chuck is one of the people that I like to refer to as the we of Booya amps because it's somewhat of a family. Chuck's played with Lou Reed. He's played with David Bowie.
Yes.
He's done tremendous amounts of soundtrack work for National Geographic, New York Times, all this different stuff.
Yeah,
I mean, the guitar architecture stuff. I mean, the guy is literally just like he invented, as far as I'm concerned, was one of the inventors of guitar synth technology.
Absolutely.
And one of the real pioneers of the whole thing. And he was a very early adopter of Booya amplifiers.
Yeah, he was really pushing you. I feel like he was in your corner.
I was at an open mic one night and I was playing, and I'm the kind of guy. I'm a keyboard player as well as a bass player and guitar player.
I see. So he knows what he's talking about. Bass player.
Yeah,
so
I am a bass player.
He's playing it, so that's one of the things. So you know what you're listening for.
Yes, yeah, and I have quite the collection of as equipment as you've seen.
So that's a huge problem though for a lot of us. Is there's a lot of people who make bass gear that aren't bass players. And sometimes it's nice to have somebody who understands your plight, right?
Well, yes, it is. I mean, there's a lot of influence. There's a lot of outside influence I've found. And that's, circling back to the first thing that we talked about, that's one of the reasons I try to stay off internet forums is because I like to build and use and execute stuff that I enjoy hearing and listening to. And then it just so happened that when people heard it, they're like, I have this stack of pedals and all these different things and everything, and that's the tone I'm going for.
Right.
And you're getting it out of this box. It's like, yeah, man, you want one? So that was always kind of the way I just followed my ears over the years. Not saying that I have golden ears or anything, but as a player, I knew what I didn't like more than anything else.
Sure.
So that was really where it started from, was just, getting old equipment that was broken and bringing it back to life and not liking the way it sounded and finding out how to do it myself. So
that's awesome. So that's really awesome. So you've been playing for a long time.
Yes.
So obviously, I mean, you and I have talked about this before. You've been playing your whole life.
Yeah, my whole life.
So
I think I started about 5 or 6 years old. Both my parents are musical. My older brother plays, so.
So you're no newbie to this format at all.
No.
So we're seeing that there's a lineage here.
Yeah,
so
there's a long time.
So through your connections, because you even work with the guys from Soul Live, you've done stuff for them as well.
yeah.
You've done work for Schofield as well. So
absolutely.
that's pretty amazing. So you have a really great connection. So you have good ears.
Yeah,
So you know what you're listening for.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. It's very, very flattering. And yeah, I let the customers, the customer base kind of speak for itself. When you get people that call you that are like, oh yeah, Bernie Worrell recommended you to me, or John Medeski or John Schofield, or
Even Kimmock comes by your place too,
yeah.
right?
I mean, I haven't seen him in a while, but yeah, I miss him.
You have a lot of that dead jazz, like Blue Note kind of guys.
Yes, a lot of the Blue Note guys came on board because a lot of the stuff that I really got intense learning experience was the Hammond organ, Leslie speakers.
Yeah.
That was really what got me into everything, all things vacuum tube related.
Okay.
And it was great. So by that proxy, your name gets around pretty quick when you can fix Hammond organs. So.
Yeah. Well, I know as somebody who loves tube amps. Like I obviously play a lot of tube amps. The funny thing is, it's so hard to find somebody who repairs them. So when somebody's when somebody finds somebody who knows what they're doing with it, it's like the Holy Grail. And all of a sudden, you don't always share that name out because you don't want to get them too busy. But it does get shared.
And that's kind of the thing. I mean, it's like I have customers who are like, "Dude, I see you more than I see my barber." It's like, all right, well, that's fantastic.
Or you don't cut your hair very much.
Or you don't cut your hair very much, like you don't have any.
God
like
cuts your hair.
Yeah, exactly. God cut my hair for me. He gave me a permanent haircut.
So. So with that, I mean, it's so we know that there's a background here. You know you're a player. You know what you're listening for, and so you decided now this preamp, it's new to us, but it's not new.
New.
How long have you been working on this?
For about 12 and a half years, I would say.
12 and a half years.
12 and a half years.
Wow.
Of different types of R&D.
Okay.
All kinds of different people have had different revisions of them over the years.
I've seen a couple at Chuck's place, some different iterations of it.
Yeah. And that's the way it goes. I mean, until you get it just right, just like Willy Wonka says, you got to get it just right.
Just right. Okay.
It takes a long time, and then it boils down to more than just the circuit, because the circuit's been around for a long time. There's been very few changes to the audio path of that preamp, but layout, chassis, supplies, control layout, which how do you want to do it, the form factor of it takes a long time to really get it exactly where you want it to be, and being able to make sure that you got everything in line and all your ducks in a row. And
absolutely. Because I think that's and I want to pull this out because I want to. Sure. I want since this is the one that you gave me. Now I have a lot of stuff on here, but this is it. This is now. What number is this one? Do you remember?
I think it's 2 or 3.
Of the new design.
Of the new. How many of those that I've built since this point? Oh man.
So, because giving us now, it's one thing for me to talk about what this is. It's another thing for you.
For me to talk about what it is.
So there are some unique things because like I said, I have a Noble as well, and I love my Noble. My Noble, it's a great.
Oh yeah, it's fantastic.
But I found that I like this. Obviously it's moved off my pedal board. So I still have it, but it moved off my pedal board for a reason. Right. Now, there's a big reason. Can you tell us a little bit about this DI level, which that one doesn't have? Now, can you give me some, and also it has a mid-range, which that one doesn't have.
Also doesn't have.
So explain some of these features here that are unique. Can you do that for me?
Sure,
Especially
absolutely.
the DI level.
So the way that the preamp is laid out is it's a dual tube vacuum tube preamp setup, and one of the tubes is for the preamp, and the other one is basically what handles the DI. That's your driver tube. So inside of the preamp, you'll see that there's a DI level, and then there's a dedicated amp output section that handles the 1/4 inch unbalanced section on the side. Both of these outputs are completely independent. Volume-wise, so you can set your DI level exactly where you want it, but you still have control of what you're sending to your amplifier, and you don't have to get under the sound man's skin too much, and everything else like that. And the mid-range control is actually very important. I've never been satisfied with where the mid-range controls sit on most bass amplifiers, unless I was going for an SVT type of sound. I've always found that the mid-range control, when you start messing with it, it's very close to what an SVT would do, and that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Right.
But that's not necessarily what I'm going for all the time.
Okay.
You know, so I wanted an actual mid-range control that was wide enough to really present the different aspects of pickup placement on the guitar. That was the biggest thing.
Okay.
Was you have bridge pickups, you have humbuckers, you have single coils and a Strat, or you have single coils and a Telecaster. Those pickups, will behave extremely differently from each other as it is. But when you look at where those are on the guitar,
Let's talk about those jazz bass versus that P bass pickup.
exactly.
That's a big thing.
But I mean, I'm just giving an example: a Music Man pickup versus a jazz bass or a P bass.
Yeah, very different output.
The output is I could deal with the output. We can handle that. But I always just found out that mid-range controls on other preamps just didn't. They were very focused into a very narrow area, and I wanted to get around that. So the mid-range control is very big. It's very airy.
Okay.
It's something that you don't get on a lot of bass preamps. Is when you turn the mid-range control up, you hear it. It doesn't just get crunchy. It actually opens up your sound quite a bit. And
Okay.
it's definitely something that stands out from most of the other preamps on the market.
And I noticed too, you have this low and high. What is the deal with that one?
So on the amp output section, you have two different levels of operation, obviously low and high. What that will give you is on low, it's a minus 30 dB pad on the amp output section.
Okay.
Which will allow you to plug this preamp into the front end of your amplifier, like your B15 right here,
right.
and use it like any other sort of boost, like the Benson, the germanium boost, which is awesome. But if you put it on high, that now gives you the ability to drive a power amp directly, where you don't need an amp. So if you had a Crown power amp on top of your SVT 810 fridge,
Sure.
you just throw that up there, that thing will drive it with room to spare.
So you're talking about like especially like the pro level, like
Right.
not the working class zeros where you're playing at the bar. However, you might be somebody who's using a power amp and you just wanna,
you might
just bypass
have like TC Electronics now is making those powered cabinets, like those satellite powered cabinets.
Yeah,
So
I
it's
didn't
like
think about that.
but even still, if you have your Fender Rumble or something that has an effects loop on it,
Yeah.
effects send, effects return, or a power amp input and a preamp output, you would plug this on high into the power amp input or your effects return, and you could bypass the entire front of that whole preamp on the top of the amplifier and just use this to power the speakers. It's fantastic.
And that's awesome. You said that. So this is a dual tube rectifier inside here.
Well, it's a dual tube preamp.
Dual tube.
Yeah, one of the tubes is a driver for the DI, and the other one is dedicated to the preamp. So they have very specific jobs.
Awesome. So it's similar to something like what this is doing, or
It is similar. I mean, this I believe the Noble has a transformer match DI.
Yeah.
I didn't go too much into the circuitry inside of it, because
sure. And I don't want you to
Yeah.
because like ideally what we're doing is I'm just saying because right now we only know of really one
tube preamp.
preamp. Yeah.
Exactly.
So knowing that there's another one out there is really good to know.
Right.
And for me, they both have they have some elements that are similar, and then there's just some elements that I in my experience I found this a little bit more flexible.
Yes, I've heard that quite a bit, actually,
Okay.
is that this is a little bit more flexible. And one of the things that you brought up was that DI level.
Yeah.
While there is, obviously half of the preamp stage driving the DI inside of the Noble really is, you don't have a level control for your DI.
No. I've always had whenever I would record with it into my interface, I'd have to crank the interface to
Right.
really get it up. And what I've done recently with yours is I will actually crank the DI out on the preamp and push that up.
Yeah, and then pad the hell out of your interface because this thing is generating so much output in comparison to the other preamps that are on the market right
Yes. Well, especially for a tube one, because the other ones aren't tubes, so
They're not. I mean, you need a lot more transistors to do what one vacuum tube will do. So, I don't know. I've found that this is a true high voltage, insulated. I mean, those vacuum tubes run at 380 volts. This is like, this is an actual tube.
Yes.
High voltage, no joking around inside of this thing.
And you modeled this after a classic amp, right? So what is the classic amp that you modeled this
Bassman.
after? You modeled after the Bassman.
Bassman. I mean, you finely tune it. There's no. People can say custom design circuitry, all this other stuff and everything. Man, they're all variations on the same theme, you know. And I'm not going to sit here and jump up and down and say that I came up with this great preamp. but it's an application thing. I took a lot of different aspects of different things that I've learned over the years doing all these repairs on very unique and oddball instruments.
Okay.
That I was able to compile this preamp that nobody's doing on the market right now.
Sure.
And it's, some people, they don't quite know how to handle it yet because they're like, this thing is like real. And I'm like, yeah, that's the whole point.
So with that, so now that it's out, like people can order this, right?
Yep.
So
www.booyaamps.com.
what's the turnaround time on one of these?
About 8 weeks.
8 weeks? Okay.
Yep. We're doing them as soon as you buy them. You go right into the queue. We have about 6 in the queue right now, which is great. That we're doing by the end of the week.
That's amazing. You said 8 weeks. I know for some of the other ones that I've seen it's almost 2 years for some of them to wait. So you put the money down. And I know it was like, so when I bought my Noble, it was $1,600. It was $1,600 when I bought that. I had to wait 24 months.
Wow.
So you said 8 weeks. What is the price point?
$749.
$749.
Yep.
Wow.
$749.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great.
Well, I did, like I said, it's been going for a long time. So a lot of time has gone into engineering for repeatability. If we need to do any sort of maintenance on it, which we haven't yet, but you know, they're very easy to maintain. It's very easy to do the stuff that you need to do. The tubes are very accessible right through the back. I actually encourage people when they buy them. We ship them with JJ vacuum tubes, 12AX7s, you know, so right off the shelf vacuum tubes, but if you are a hoarder of delicious vintage glass like I am,
sure,
I encourage people to mess around with different vacuum tubes in there as well.
Okay.
And, you know, just like unplug it, wait a couple minutes, there's drainage, it'll drain all the power out for you and everything, and then you can just swap tubes, go for it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So 8 weeks and $749. Now, does that include shipping or is shipping?
Yep. Shipping is included.
Holy crap, that's really great.
Yeah,
that's
good.
Awesome. And where are you from?
I am from Lake Pacong, New Jersey.
So these are coming in from New Jersey.
Yep, making them right here, right in Jersey.
So that's amazing. That's really amazing, Jamie.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Wow. You know, I've been a fan of the preamp. You gave me one back in April to try out.
Right.
And that was like, that floored me. I mean, because I came over to your place, I tried it out, and all because, you know, Chuck was like, you gotta try this, you gotta try this.
You gotta check it out.
And it's like, I know you like the Noble, I know you like your Noble. And I came over and I was just like, I was floored, and I was like, you know what? Let me play with it for a little bit.
Take it home, chew on it.
And I wanted to test it out, run it. I wanted to A/B it with the Noble, just as an option, because I mean, it's not fair to A/B it with something that isn't tube based, right?
Of course,
because they're two different animals. It's like my Phil Jones. I have that preamp over there as well,
right?
And that's a digital switching one, which is a very different preamp than all those. And of course, you know, some are right for some are right for others.
Of course,
and I love the sound of tubes. Like and you know, somebody even said to me, why are you putting tubes in front of tubes?
Why not?
Yeah, exactly. Why, if you're putting digital in front of digital, it's the same thing, right? So the tubes is just it's just for me, I like that. And I've been playing with the gain stage of it, just kind of like warming it up a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because I'm running it into an SVT when I'm not running it into my B15.
Right.
Right.
So you got plenty on tap already.
Yeah.
But it adds. I mean, you have Ampeg preamps, which are fantastic.
Yeah.
You know, where you have the B15.
I've been running into that Mesa too, because I have that Mesa Walkabout, which I use as my combo. So sometimes when I have, especially during the winter, we're in the Northeast, so gigs here tend to be inside a lot, right? Like the summer ones, if here also get rained out a lot, so they end up moving inside.
Yeah.
So I ran it into the Mesa as well. So the Mesa is slightly different.
Right. Very different.
Very different.
Yeah.
Still produced a very, very nice quality of tone. And I was impressed with that because I knew the Ampeg would be great. Like the Ampeg is good on its own.
Of course.
So it's like you put something in front, you're making it even gooder.
Yeah.
Now
More
that's a word.
gooder.
It's more gooder, yes.
Yes.
But when I did it because the Mesa is a lot more, I feel like the Mesa is a lot smoother. It's more like, it's like a creamy peanut butter versus a chunky peanut butter. Like the Ampeg's definitely chunky peanut butter, right?
Right.
And the Mesa's smooth. And when I put it in there, I threw in a little bit of that distortion. I started crossing it into almost the Ampeg realm. It started getting it making it a little bit more active.
Sure.
And excited. Like, you know, like you have the exciter on so when I work with like Final Cut or Logic, Logic has the exciter option in there when you're adjusting it for. It was like it excited the tube, so it kind of pushed up a little bit. So I was kind of impressed with that because the Mesa has it's got a tube preamp section in it,
Correct.
not a tube power amp section.
Right, it's a hybrid.
It is,
yes,
but it's still produced by having the tubes on tubes. It definitely gave it a lot more tubey goodness, right?
Right. It's a depth thing. I mean, and it goes above just like, oh, having tubey goodness on there. The reason that there is tubey goodness is because you have an entirely additional EQ available now at your feet.
Yeah.
So you have a gain stage, and you have a full EQ where you can have, your EQ settings on the amp and your graphic EQ or whatever else like that. And the preamp plays great with pedals. I have guys that use it after their dark glass preamp. And they're like, I don't know, man, the combo just sounds awesome.
You're saying like the dark glass analog or anagram?
Anagram, yeah. They're putting it into that, and they're like, this is fantastic.
So I've been thinking, because I don't want to mess with that. When I was thinking about, because I have an anagram coming in as well to test.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I want to run it actually through the effects send and return and run this as the line in so that I have a clean signal, and then I can use the digital. So it's different story. Different story, but this since you went down that road.
Yeah, but this will play, I mean... this handles an octave, like my OC2. I have an original Japanese OC2. That thing eats it for breakfast, which is a big issue that I've heard on a lot of these preamps, is that you throw an octave or you get these weird transient peaks on some of the solid state preamps when you're using something like an envelope filter if you're going for the bootsy thing, But
I've seen that. I mean, to be honest with you, that's why I don't use a lot of pedals. Like I'm a single or one or two pedal person, and I'll pull the other ones out. Now this is different. The pedal train that I just showed you there is all just signal shaping.
They're all just boosts.
It's
like,
signal
like
shaping.
cleans.
Yeah, signal
exactly.
shaping versus dirt.
Right.
And that is always front line. But again, keeping that clean and having that clean signal is so important.
Is pretty killer. I mean, it's like, in addition to bass, we've been using these in the studio. I'll use them as a tube DI box for the guitar player, and we'll put them before their pedal, so we have a clean, unaffected signal that's coming in, and then we can reamp that through other amplifiers afterwards if we want to.
Oh, so reamping. Okay, yeah.
So we're using it on a totally different, like we did drums. I put two of them next to each other, and I ran a stereo mix of the drums out through that, like oversaturated, and it was just. Oh,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So let's keep focused on bass here though, because I want to talk about this because I think this is another one a lot of us would talk about. So like I'm a very passive bass user, right? I love my Fender P basses. And I've been a passive bass guy for a long time. Now I do have a Music Man with a 18 volt preamp in it.
Right.
Now, do you find, is there a difference from running an active bass into this versus a passive bass?
Well, the whole point of the first stage of that preamp was I built it really forgiving of input signal.
Okay.
Because, one of my basses, my fretless, has an Aguilar OBP3 inside of it.
Okay.
So that thing gets pretty stinking on the output as well. There's a ton of signal coming out of it as well. But I also have my P bass and my jazz bass. And so how do you do that where you don't have to really, keep screwing with the preamp or your gain levels and everything else like that? So I designed the input stage to be able to handle tremendous amounts of input voltage swing. That will give you the ability to put a P bass through it and your Music Man through it without really having to mess around with the gain controls and the EQ too much.
That's great. So I can bring both those basses on the gig and not have to worry that I'm going to blow out my amp because I'm switching it out. Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's really awesome. So it's a really flexible amp.
Right.
Really flexible amp.
That was part of the why it took so long, because I wanted to figure out how to do this where we didn't really lose anything on the back end, but somebody was just telling me that just purchased one that they have their brand new I forget what bass it was, but it's this super heavy duty 6-string active thing, and he was like, there's no difference between this and my P bass. He's like, I plug it in. He's like, they both sound amazing. Like this, usually I have to turn all these knobs and turn the bass down and do all this other stuff. But when you start getting into vacuum tubes, there's just a natural compression that happens.
Yeah, I love the natural compression. Yep. There is something about that. Definitely, there's an aura about it, right?
Yes.
Like I've noticed when I've switched, I've had a tube amp go out on me on a stage, and I switch it up with a digital switching amp, and you feel the difference.
You
feel it just even magnetically around you. Right. There is a difference between the two.
And it's like I always have this conversation with people about, power and how tubes sound louder than than transistors and everything, and it's just, I wouldn't necessarily say it's louder. I just think that they're more present. I think that they're more honest as to what's going on.
Is it the overtone series maybe that you hear more of it? It's more reflective of that possibly?
When you start stacking gain stages, you start getting different orders of harmonics.
Okay.
And in certain guitar amplifiers, we want that. That's how you get great overdrive. Even with bass amps, the old Hiwatts, they generated fantastic overdrive harmonics, and you get like the old Jethro Tull stuff, and like ELP, like Greg Lake's bass tone and the early ELP stuff is just crushing with that jazz bass and a high watt. Nothing out of the. So why? It's like it's kind of like going back to your roots. It's like. It's like we've strayed from the path. It's like everybody's trying to emulate these amps that were around 50, 60 years ago.
Well, it's everybody's trying to make everything lighter, right? So by trying to make things lighter, we cut out the things that actually matter. It's the difference between the 8-cylinder and a 4-cylinder, right? So it's like, yeah, we can get that 4-cylinder. It feels like it, but it
no
doesn't.
Replacement for displacement.
Exactly. It just doesn't have the power. You step on the gas pedal, it doesn't go.
It's a different. It's like you can measure horsepower one way. And then you'd measure torque on top of that. So, like a diesel engine has much lower horsepower versus torque, but you could say the same thing for tubes. So it's like the less you have in the way, the better it sounds to me, So you look at these old basement preamps, you look at like the dual Showman preamp with the bass switch, the deep switch on it, and you look at, what Alembic was doing with some of the that was just a copy of a Basement. It's a copy or a dual Showman technically, but it's like, and it's like, wow, these Alembic things sound fantastic. And you look at it, you're like, oh. So now we're in a different world. Because everything is digital, especially when you're doing, front of house. You're going to these gigs as a player. If you're dealing in a situation where you're playing at a large venue, usually your front of house system is going to be 100% digital.
Okay.
With
the fractal and all that stuff.
Yeah, or not even that. Just like like the PA system. You have like the X32 consoles. Everything comes back through a LAN cable now. Yep. So you don't have much room to wiggle tonally in those. So why not give them something really good to play with? Where you got a ton of signal out of this thing, and it's like, well, you could just turn your pads all the way on, and I got plenty of room here. And as I encourage people to not use line level inputs with the DI on that thing, just because it has so much clean output.
I'm looking forward to that. I have a couple of festival gigs coming up this summer. I'm planning on it being there for that because I think that last year when it was funny because I took a couple of different DIs with me to try out, and I ran into some issues where they were like, the level wasn't enough,
right?
Which was crazy. And then I had to go in with one of theirs, and whenever you go with one of
this, you get the noise floor and
and whoever's running your sound, it's like they never bring a bass specific DI, and it's always like they know what they're doing to the most part, but it's not the sound that you want versus the sound that they want.
Right.
So being able to control that to some degree, I'm really looking forward to.
Yes, it's a great thing, and you're not going to have a problem with the sound guy telling you that you're not getting enough out of that thing.
That's good.
Yeah.
So what is the future for Booya amps? Where do we see this going?
Well, we're building them as they come in, getting them out the door, which is fantastic. Everybody's loving them. Everybody that's got them.
But this has been, it's not just a bass-specific product. It works for bass,
right?
But it can expand into the whole musical
Well, it was
echelon.
designed for bass.
Okay.
But we just happened to figure out that the thing rocks on literally everything else.
It's like the bass man in general, right?
Pretty much.
It wasn't really meant for a guitar, but
right.
Yeah.
So, we are using them as buffer amplifiers. We're using them as overdrives, where you can crank the output on Filament in front of your deluxe reverb and turn the deluxe way down, and you still get great overdriven tube tone. So it's a very flexible unit where it does a lot of tricks. And even still, I'm hearing from people that are telling me new things, ways that they're using them that I never intended the thing to be used for, but it's fantastic.
I saw the guitar player from Soul Live was using one. Krasno, yeah.
Well, Neil's been using one for like 8 years, a bass player. That's been the keys bass for Soul Live for almost a decade now at this point.
Well, I saw Krasno was playing bass though. He was out with Derek Trucks at one point.
Oh, that was a long time ago.
That was a while ago.
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
Okay.
That was 2013. But no, I don't think he was just using an SVT on those rigs.
Okay.
So,
scratch that. I just know that I saw he was using one somewhere.
At Bowl Live.
Okay.
When we, I was doing all the backlining for them when they were doing Bowl Live, and we were running the gig and everything. So everything that they were playing through, 2018, 2019, pretty much. Those are all my amps.
Okay.
All my gear. Neil's had one of those bass preamps for a long time.
So right now, production's what you're
Production
what
I'm working on.
You want to get these out in people's hands. And you said this is $749 currently for this preamp.
Correct.
And you said 8 weeks is the turnaround.
8 weeks.
That's great. Well, Jamie, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So thanks for being on Meet the Maker.
Thanks for having me.
And it's really great to have you here. And Bass Musician, thanks for hosting this again, and thanks for having us. And if you're interested in looking up the preamp, you can go to booyaamplifiers.com.
www.booyaamps.com.
Booyaamps.com. So go ahead and take a look there. And you have sound samples.
Yep. Got some videos up there and a bunch of other stuff. We're slowly adding media as everybody sends it to me.
So when you get this, send it in and
absolutely.
Make sure you send in sound samples. That's great. That's great. Well, thank you, Jamie, for joining me today.
Thanks for
thank you,
having me.
Bass Musician, for hosting us once again. Remember to check out Bass Musician weekly, bi-weekly. There's always new stuff coming, and we want to make sure that you see what's happening in the world, because a lot of times some stuff is like it's a little secret, and we want to help that secret get out.